Hey, I'm Chris Epp from Make Everything, and today we're going to modify this 60-inch bar to work on my chainsaw. Check it out. So I'm going to start out by doing a little bit of a refurbishment on this bar. I picked this up a couple years back with some other chainsaws that I bought, and it's in really good condition. It just has some surface rust on it. So I just went over it with some degreaser and a surface pad. I cleaned off some of the main sort of rust that I could find, and then I took this surface conditioning tool. This is a Porter Cable Restorer with a soft Scotch-Brite wheel, and I just did a little bit of burnishing on it to get any of the deeper pitted rust out of there and keep the thing clean. I just wanted to be able to have as little resistance when cutting through wood as possible and start with a nice clean piece of material. So this is a 36-inch bar that I got with my Husqvarna saw when I bought it, and you can see the bolt, the stud track. You've got the tensioning holes, and then you've got the oil ports. So on the bar that came with it, you can see the oil port is right here, and it's a little hard to make out because it's so small, but oil goes in right here, the bar oil. It feeds into the chain, and then it gets carried through this track by the chain, and it lubricates the route that the chain goes on. So this bar is not for the Husqvarna saw. This is for an old Homelight saw. And what's nice about it is, if you look at it, the stud track and the tensioning holes line up perfect. So this bar absolutely fits on my saw, and I've ran this bar before, but the last time I ran it, I noticed that the saw was running really hot. And the reason being was that the hole where the oil gets into the chain doesn't line up. So I think my main problem is that I wasn't getting any oil, or not enough oil, bar oil, into my chain path. So therefore my chain was running pretty dry, and that would be why my saw would overheat. This is a huge bar with a ridiculously long chain. So if there's any lack of lubrication on that chain, it's gonna force the saw to just run way too hard and die. So what my plan here is to essentially just mark out this location, you know, which is about right there. Yeah, about right there. And modify this hole by adding basically the hole that's here using a die grinder. And that should allow me, so essentially that's the path, that should allow me to get oil onto my chain path and have this bar work a lot better. So my original thought was to make this hole larger, which would just generally allow more oil to flow. But the hole in this factory bar is pretty small, and I think it's like that for a reason. So I've got a little carbide burr, which should make quick work of this bar. This is hardened, so I couldn't just drill this, but I think I'll grab a caliper and I'll measure this distance so that we wind up in the right spot. Of course, my battery's dead. So based on the original, that's got a nice little path, and then it'll wind up depositing oil right into the track. So let's do the other side. So the Homelight saw that this was made for had 2 oil ports, but since we only have 1 oil port on the Husqvarna, we just need to do one side. So let's take the saw apart, put this on there, and see how it lines up. All right, so my oil port is right here. And you can see the way this saw works is the oil is forced along that path and then it comes out through this hole. So as long as we are lined up with that with this new bar, we should be sure to get oil out of it. Now you can see there's a ton of oil on this saw right now. This has a oil dump button. So while you're running the saw, you can press a button and it'll triple the output of bar oil for when you're doing a heavy cut. This is the biggest saw head that Husqvarna makes. It is 119 cc's and it's made for big log cutting and sawmilling applications. So you're gonna need a lot of oil. I even run a second oiler on this usually when I do run it. So you can see that stock hole that was in there totally missed the oil port, like completely missed it. And we can actually make sure that we hit our mark by taking this off and matching this up with our bar and seeing where we wound up. So like I said, the oil travels through this and goes down to that path. So you can see if I would just leave this on here and not have cut in that groove, we would never have gotten to the oil port. So I'm still gonna have to elongate this hole a little bit because I wanna make sure the oil can get into there. So I'm gonna elongate this hole down to about there on this side. And that's gonna guarantee me that no matter where my bar is, I can always make sure that I'm getting oil to that port. Now, obviously, if my bar is all the way out, I might be a little far out for it. There is no more room for it to travel. So maybe I will elongate this a little bit too, just in case. And let's check the other side. So this side I wound up okay. I came down far enough. We'll go down a little bit farther just in case. Nice path for the oil to flow through. Nice. Now my only other concern is losing oil into that hole because the actual tensioning holes are a lot smaller. So I could have oil sumping into there when it really should be getting all the way up into my oil port. I'm not really sure what to do about that. All right, so I need to make a bushing that fits in there, a nice tight fit, and then I can just plug that hole when I'm running the saw. And everything else on here will keep that bushing in place. It's not going to be able to fall out, right? Because this is going to be on there like that. And then on the other side of this, you've got this thing sitting. So there's going to be pressure on that bushing. It's not going to be able to go anywhere. And we'll put a bushing in there and make it out of brass or steel. And it'll withstand the heat. And once it's in there, it'll keep oil from getting stuck in that hole. And then when I need to flip the bar, I can put it on the other side as well. All right, let's cut that out. Now let me use this opportunity to tell you why you need a 2x72 variable speed grinder in your shop. Making small parts like this can be such a pain, and being able to infinitely vary the speed on this using this VFD, turn it all the way down to a crawl or turn it up so that it's cranking, is awesome. This is a Brodbeck Ironworks 2x72. By loosening the lever, you can flip this horizontally, and then you can flip the work rest. Super versatile machine. I love it. Made in America. Check this thing out. There'll be a link in my bio. Still a little left. We're just going to use a file to take that down. I think the next best thing to do would be to throw some washers on here and bolt this on, run the saw, and make sure that I've got oil pumping into the bar track. All right, so I've got the bar on here. You can see my little brass spacer. I'm gonna run it. There's no chain on it, so I don't have to worry about getting cut up. The flywheel's gonna be spinning, but that's okay. And right now the brake is off because the brake is actually on this side cover. So we'll run the saw, and what we wanna see is we wanna see oil getting up into this track. Well, I would say that it's definitely getting up there. It's pumping out of this oil hole, so I've got to go and see. We might want to plug this hole, and if we plug that hole, it'll just make sure that the bar oil doesn't leak out. Right now it's coming out both sides, so it's actually putting a lot of oil up onto here. You can see how quickly the oil gets pumped out of this saw. So I'm going to try to weld this hole shut. This is a piece of aluminum, and hopefully by wedging that in there and welding up against it, the weld spatter doesn't get into the actual bar groove. If it does, I'll just grind it out. You got to weld the other side too. We're also trying to avoid the hole that we ground in there. If we have to go back, we can. I have to do a little bit of filing or grinding in there. See if I have a cutoff wheel that fits. Oh, perfect. All right, so we should only be seeing oil up here now. Let's find out. That thing puts out a lot of bar oil. That's exactly what we want. Bar oil is just getting up into the top groove, and then the chain will carry it that way. All right, let's throw the whole thing back together and throw a chain on it. And usually a good way to check is if bar oil is skipping off the front of the chain, we're good. So let's do a full assembly. So this saw has a auxiliary oil dump. So you press it and it'll dump 4 times as much bar oil as it normally would. So you can see how much bar oil is pouring out the bottom. And I think it's black just because this chain is really dirty. But it looks pretty good. I'm getting bar oil all the way. Yeah, I'm getting bar oil all the way out over to here. It's definitely feeding the chain. This bar doesn't have a roller nose on it. It's got a hard nose. So it's smoking a little bit at the edge of the bar, which I kind of expected. But on my actual chainsaw milling attachment, I have a auxiliary oiler that goes at the tip, and that's just going to help get oil to the tip, and I won't have to worry about smoking this. So I've got oil getting all the way through this. Overall, I'm pretty happy with how this came out. It works. All right, that about does it for this video. Really excited to have this set up running properly with the right amount of oil running through the bar. Got a couple of milling jobs coming up and I can't wait to use it. So if you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel for more videos like this and videos using this ridiculous saw. And if you want to see what I'm doing day to day here at the shop, you can follow me right here at Make Everything Shop on Instagram. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm Chris Zepp from Make Everything, and I will see you on the next one. Thanks.